Hi, everybody. How are y'all today? It's Wednesday. You thought you were getting rid of me, but I'm back. How are y'all doing today? Hope you're doing pretty swell for a Wednesday. Today, I will be talking about stand your ground. And what made me decide to talk about that today was I was mentioned in an article about a case that you may or may not be familiar with that is currently a stand your ground case in Georgia. And so right now, the gentleman's name is Marcus Williams. His family calls him Mark, and he is currently incarcerated right now. And his family have been in some way advocating for him, obviously, for his case to be ruled as such, for him defending himself against harassment and being threatened by a group of people. So let me just give you the short of that. And I hope that you all can hear me. And I see it's 11 people on here, y'all. I have not been able to see who's in there yet, but when it does pop up, y'all give me a shout out, and that's how we're going to do it. But, so yeah, that's where we are. So we're going to talk about that and a few other stand your ground cases, and I'm going to just share with you my experience with it. And I'm also going to talk about my experience with it as it relates to what I'm seeing, the trend that I've seen since my stand your ground cases and other ones that have taken place. And I'm also going to tell you what I believe is the four things that I find to be a common thread or a common theme as to how people will actually rule, or how they perceive it, or perhaps maybe how that case may progress along. Now, let me just say this. Obviously, I am not an attorney. Nope, not even that. And I don't believe I need to be one, simply because I'm going to come from my expert experience in my particular case. And also, I will say, to me, it gives me a different advantage, because I don't need to know legalities to kind of tell you what I know I experienced. And to be honest with you, it's probably few in law enforcement and in the legal system that's probably even tried a stand your ground case, let alone an immunity hearing. So, I'm just going to go straight from that perspective, and hopefully, you can stick around and kind of get an idea of where I'm coming from. So let's talk about Marcus. Marcus, they call him Mark Williams, is from Statesboro, Georgia. He is a 21-year-old student athlete. And recently he was involved in an incident where him and his girlfriend were out. Now, let me give you some background about Mark's ethnicity. He is biracial. His mother's white, his father's black, and his family is diverse. So it's a lot of mixed, races in his family. And so he and his girlfriend, who were out, they were white. They were out getting food at Taco Bell. A couple of white males and one white female in a truck rolled up on them, proceeded to call them names, nigger lover, nigger, and harass them and say some other things. They got into their vehicle and left. They continued to follow behind them and tried to run them off the road. Marcus pulled out his licensed firearm, shot a few times, and ended up hitting the 17-year-old girl in the vehicle, and she later died. From what I understand, and this is all information that I'm going to get from the story, so when I present anything to you, if anything changes, it's going to be simply because of what I'm getting as far as information that's already put out there. So he turned himself in at some point. From what they're saying is that he's being charged with, I think, aggravated felony murder, and aggravated assault, and felony murder. So those are the two charges. And his family speaking up on his behalf, and Georgia is one of the 32 states, including Florida, where my case took place, is also a stand your ground state. Now, I think this is important to talk about because stand your ground has been very controversial, probably since its inception. But as the time has gone on, we've seen where there's been a variance of how it is applied and who it actually works for. And so when you do some data and you do some looking up and you say, well, there was this one case where the black guy got off for shooting this black guy, that's an anomaly. That's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm talking about the consistent practice of how white males are able to get the benefit of the doubt on the scene from using self-defense stand your ground. 9 times out of 10, everyone else is going to be arrested. That be a black male, a black female, more than likely, maybe even a white woman is going to be arrested and charged, and then later on have to fight their case out in the courts. But as we have seen in Marquise McLaughlin with Michael Dreyfus, excuse me, as well as Sawatu Salam Ra in Michigan. We've seen this with Michael Dunn. We've seen this with George Zimmerman. And so here we are with another case outside of myself, Mark Williams. So anyway, he hoping to be able to use stand your ground in his case. And so I wanted to talk about it because his aunt said this case is not just about Mark, and she's absolutely correct. I felt the same way when I was going on with my case. I felt like it was not just about me, and I felt like there was this instance where this was this law, and it was very apparent that it wasn't a colorblind thing. It was very apparent that because of who I am as a black female, that for whatever reason fear wasn't a real thing for me. And even when we went through the immunity hearing, and just the way the judge ruled when she denied my stand your ground hearing, it was not conceivable for her to believe that a black woman acted in or basically had to defend myself, and fear was the reason. And so I get the idea, if you look at how things are handled, give an example, George Zimmerman, as well as other people, they've always been pretty much given the benefit of the doubt. If you say, hey, I was in fear, which is very subjective, that tends to be the go for the people who are on the scene. And then, everyone else, it's, maybe or maybe not, so we're going to have to, arrest you, charge you, and prosecute you. And so I wanted to talk about that. Now, here's the thing with stand your ground. A lot of people want it appealed, and I definitely understand that, and I don't disagree. I think the issue that I have with it is that this is a law like any other law, and it should be applied correctly. It should be applied non-discriminatory, and it should be applied equal across the board. But because we know that people are biased, we know that people have prejudices, we know that people are sometimes even struggle with implicit bias. Some are just flat out racist, and that is always going to determine how somebody rules, somebody applies it, and what they feel a person's intent is when they in fact do decide to extend their right to self-defense. So I'm going to tell you about a few cases if you don't know. Hey, James. Hey, Elgin. Thank you. Let me tell you about a few cases. So I just told you about Mark Williams, and everything I'm telling you about, I'm actually going to put into a link so you can just kind of look for it on your own. And some of them are video, so it's really easy to just kind of get a snapshot of what's going on. And the other reason why I want to talk about this is because as of, I think, yesterday, the judge in Mark Williams' case has put a gag order, and that was essentially after Mark Williams' attorneys decided to speak to the actual publicist, the journalists and the media. He has now issued a gag order in that case. And to me, that's just to suppress the information that the public gets, especially in a time like this. So as long as they provide details, I'm going to talk about whatever it is. Since they can't, I will. So I ask that you share this video. And also there is a petition for Mark Williams as well. We'll see how this goes. So there's a case similar that happened in Jacksonville, Florida, back in 2011, and it was on the Buckman Bridge. It was similar to this particular case. It was two people. It was road rage. The white guy in the car cut off the black teenagers or young people in the car. There was some words exchanged. Apparently, the black teenagers threw out something out the window at the car. The white car owner, he thought it was a missile or a weapon, so he grabbed his firearm. The article states that it went off and somebody in the teenager's car, the black teenager's car, was actually shot in the leg. When the police got there, heard the sides of the story, they later ruled that the teenagers in the car, he was actually arrested and charged with throwing a missile out the car, or some type of thing with a missile. So he was charged, and that particular gentleman was ruled for standing his ground. So it was similar. Only difference is somebody didn't die. I'm going to hook that link in this video so you can see it for yourself. So these are things I have just been following. There was another case, I can't remember the year, where a gentleman was involved in a murder incident inside of a house. The story is that he was inside the house. It was a drug deal went bad, and the people, a female and a male, went in to rob them. When he got in there, they tried to rob him. He killed the man and injured the girl. He was found guilty. He went to prison. They brought him back. He was a white man. They brought him back and ruled that he, in fact, could kill that man, took that murder back, and it was ruled as self-defense. Now, what kills me about this whole thing is the fact that he was already in the commission of a crime. So if you're in a commission of a crime of a drug deal, didn't think you could stand your ground. But I'm no lawyer. Check with your lawyer friends. But it happened. I'll link that in the story as well. Then I'm going to tell you about Suwatu Salam-Ra. So in Detroit, she was an environmental activist, and she was in Detroit. She had an incident with a young lady who ran her car into hers. Her two-year-old daughter was in the car at the time. Suwatu had a registered license and concealed weapon with her. She pulled the weapon out. She brandished it to give her a warning. She succeeded. The girl went away, and Suwatu was arrested for aggravated assault. She fought her case, much like me, on the outside for about a year. She went to trial. She lost trial. Suwatu was 7 months pregnant. 2 judges denied her bond. She gave birth to her baby in prison in shackles. Yes, she did. And get this, in 2019, the Michigan Court of Appeals overturned her conviction, stating something similar to mine, that the jury instructions were inaccurate for a case where there was non-deadly force and how you can use self-defense. Her case was overturned. She was out for a year after she gave birth. She couldn't breastfeed her baby. She couldn't hold her baby. Her baby couldn't see her. She stayed in prison. Her sentence was overturned. The state decided, you know what, we are going to still prosecute, much like mine. Some of the similarities here is I just had a baby. Suwatu was actually pregnant. I'm a black woman. Suwatu is as well. I had a concealed weapons permit in my own home, licensed gun. She was in her yard. She had her licensed vehicle, her licensed firearm, concealed weapons permit. Difference is I discharged the firearm. In my home, she brandished her firearm. Nobody was hurt. Nobody was injured. She went to trial. She lost. Overturned now, the state decides, you know what, we want to waste taxpayers' dollars, and we're going to pursue actually prosecuting her again. Suwatu, in January of this year, had to reach a plea agreement. So in other words, she was forced to take a plea because she didn't want to go back through trial, which I'm going to just tell you, trial is not about justice. Trial is about winning and losing. And I don't care what anybody else says. That is my experience. Find me somebody who went through a trial and let me see if it feels like justice. It just doesn't. It feels like winning or losing. That's just basically it. And so for her, the decision was to go ahead and take a plea, which means she ends up with a felony conviction for something that what she states, I am not admitting guilt, but I really don't have any other choice, because the alternative is to go to trial and possibly lose and be away from her children once again. And in my case, I did the same thing for 2 of those charges, and it was called an Alford plea. So in other words, the actual outcome of that, or if I lost, would have been too great of a loss for me to even go to trial again and lose. So you just basically say that is the reason why I'm taking a plea, not admitting guilt. That's basically what the Alford plea was. Hey, Elgin. Yep, Joshua. Wow. Hey, Willie. Hey, Zerika Diamond. That's true. They will give it to who they see fit. So that's where my issues are with stand your ground, at least with those cases. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more. I've covered a few other cases that had stand your ground issues in it, but these were the ones where I felt either matched similar to mine or were some of the most egregious. And so I'm going to put a link to each one of those things in this video when I finish. So let me just tell you today where I'm coming from in terms of how I feel about it, and the 4 things that I believe that whenever there is in fact a stand your ground case, or an instance where stand your ground is an option, or self-defense, if you will, because stand your ground is pretty much an expansion of that outside of the house, then there are 4 things that I feel like take place initially that just are going to drive the application of how law enforcement is going to use the law, how the prosecutor is going to use the law, as well as how the judges are going to rule in the law. And to me, there are 3 of the most powerful pieces of this, because you have law enforcement first. That's their written statement on the scene first. Oftentimes, there's not even enough information gathered at that time to even make an accurate decision on whether or not a person is actually could be considered stand your ground. Now, let's take this to Ahmaud Arbery real quick. So we looked at his case, and we looked at how that played out. And we looked at how the officers, the DA, and everyone else was like, yeah, this is pure self-defense. You see how that benefit of the doubt for these white men were granted until there was a video that surfaced, and his family screaming and hollering and protesting, and look at this, what's going on, highlights this man was literally stalked and murdered in broad daylight. How you can even distinguish that was a stand your ground? Obviously, we know that that was not. But the point being is they were given the benefit of the doubt. So what I found is that who makes contact with the law enforcement first, the police first, and if there's in fact a homicide, is going to determine kind of which way that's going to go. Oftentimes the people who are in these cases, like George Zimmerman, contacted the police first. In fact, he was on the phone telling them things, and they were telling him not to do it, and he did it anyway. Jury still found him not guilty. You had Michael Drakis, who basically said, hey, I said something to them, I got pushed, and hey, look what happened. Provoked it, and then decided, you know what, I'm scared because you're not getting ready to ride back up at me. That's all the way twisted, but that's happened. And then we talk about Mark Williams in Georgia. He was attacked, ran off the road. He defended himself. And again, they contacted the police first. And the question may be, well, why don't you just call the police first? Well, here's the thing. When you're in the middle of an instance where things are basically high, and I see your comments, I'm going to talk about it. That impact is quick. Like real time happens even faster than real time. It's very quick. So a lot of adrenaline, a lot of things are going on. When I'm in survival mode, the last thing I'm thinking about is how I need to get in touch with law enforcement. It may take me a minute afterwards, and if I felt like I was right and nobody was harmed, it may not be a need for me to do it if I warded off the attack. But in these cases, these people, even with Sawatu, the person hit her car, was in the wrong, and because she contacted the police first, Sawatu was arrested. Same thing in my case. Same thing with Mark Williams. Same thing with Ahmaud Arbery. Same thing with George Zimmerman. Like, the list can go on. So that's number one. Number two is race. That's undoubtedly. That is race. George Zimmerman, white. Y'all can split hairs on his real race, but he looks white. Michael Drakis, in this case, Mark Williams in Georgia. He's behind bars right now. Marissa Alexander, black woman, get the picture. Sawatu, black woman, arrested, charged. Me, arrested, charged. Mark Williams, arrested, charged. And the other men that I mentioned to you earlier all went off, or at least was given the benefit of the doubt until they was arrested, but then they were also granted bond. Imagine that. So race is undeniable. Law enforcement engages, as well as the rest of the criminal justice engine, because it really is, it's a machine. So let's see here. Stand Your Ground favors, from Elgin, Stand Your Ground favors a dominant group, normally white male, of course. Let's see here. Johnny Daniels said, one of the biggest problems is all those authorities smoke and drink together. Yeah, it's one of those things, like you can't win because the odds are so stacked against you. If you, in fact, there's the person who has to go up against law enforcement, then you have to go up against the DA and then the criminal justice system. And one thing I can't do is take this black off. That's it. Like that is something that I have no control over. And it also is very much used in determining whether or not I'm going to be granted just the basic of self-defense, let alone stand your ground. So, yes, I will continue to speak. So the next thing is, how much experience and knowledge does the first responders, as well as the attorneys and judge, actually have in the law? And just because people are lawyers don't mean they know all the law like the back of their hand. That's the reason why they have law books and case studies and precedent and all these other things, because it's very difficult. It's very the legalities, the terms, the if, a but, a or, and depending on where it is, can make a huge difference in how somebody interprets something and even how things turn out. Just for my case was overturned simply because of jury instructions, which the state says was a technicality. But I'm grateful for that technicality because of that, I was able to get a second chance. And so these are the things that the process you have to go through, is one of the things of due process. But I can tell you there is probably 1 million people sitting behind bars who are not able to have somebody put forth the proper paperwork for them, or to basically make it work in their favor. The law actually was on their side, and because somebody isn't either it's overstressed, what do you call them, public offenders, or somebody who just wanted to get money, or somebody's like, here's just another number. Somebody behind there fits our case and they're sitting behind bars, whether they're white or black. This is happening. It's more or less what I'm talking about today. It really affects us from the standpoint of cases that were nationally publicized. Let's see. The other thing is the attorneys and the judges. Now, I can tell you, in Sawatu's case, this woman was pregnant. No record. Even if you wanted to put an electronic monitor on it, you could have did it. She didn't kill anybody. They denied her bond while she go through appeal. Twice. 2 different judges did this. What's the reason? She was pregnant. What is the absolute reason? But yet, we give Zimmerman a bond. Killed and stalked a child and was told not to follow him. You see what I'm saying? My bond was $250,000 at first for shooting at drywall. And then they halved it to 125 only because I had been at the company I worked for at that time for 10 years. Yeah. So these are the people who get to decide, how if you're going to even receive a bond, if it's even going to be affordable. A lot of the times the state goes for the max. And the idea is to make sure that you stay behind bars, because it's harder to fight a case behind the bars than it is in the streets. A lot of time it's not about flight risk and public safety. It's just about making it harder for you to actually take a case and enforce you into a plea. I got a message from Ralph Young. You were late, no problem. When a black person stands their ground, they get prosecuted to the fullest, of course. But when anybody else that's not black stands their ground, then damn near nothing or absolutely nothing takes place. That's true. And Johnny said, you should have never seen the inside of a jail. Well, I did. And so here I am telling you about this kind of stuff. So that's when you say it's big. When I say it was bigger than me, when I say it wasn't all about me, it's unfortunate. One of those things you have to go through, but you make the best out of it, because now all they did was like put me like a megaphone in front of my face and like a computer and a crowd of y'all. And I'm just going to tell you about all this stuff every chance I get. How about that? Oh, and the prosecutor, she's not there anymore. That was my petty move. Yes, I did it. Pray for me. And then the last and fourth thing was how much legal defense you can afford. Huge. Huge. Because if anybody else had done what George Zimmerman did, it didn't have that $1 million defense team, I'm not sure that he would have gotten a unanimous verdict. You know what I mean? You almost have to have stellar legal attorney. Now, the differences between my attorneys the first time and the second time, honestly, are huge. And I get into that in my book, but let me just tell you, I had a team of attorneys. They were at least 24 attorneys, all over the United States and some even located in Europe. I had 3 different firms. Like God assembled me straight up an army. It was a blessing. So when you have people who don't have access to that amount of knowledge and you have people looking up all kinds of things, it makes a huge difference. And then the other thing is, people ask me all the time, did the NRA get involved? Did this person say something? Did this person say something? The NRA treads lightly. I think they're starting to speak more on things that they saw were wrong. They did come back after the fact with Sawatu Salam Ra and say, hey, this is not what we, intended for this to happen for people who have concealed weapons license. They were willing to write an amicus brief on behalf of mine had I gone back to trial. So I like to see them be more present with people who are, in these particular cases, but that's just the case. So that's all I have. I am going to basically put the link to each of those stories in there. I'm also going to let you know that there's a study that basically says that the states that have enacted or passed into law stand your ground, in fact, are not safer. As a matter of fact, they say that homicides have gone up. They have seen it to be an issue of increased gun violence. And so I'm going to put that link in there as well. When you're feeling bored, whatever, check it out. If gun violence or violence is an issue for you, you definitely want to check it out. And this is really a play to say, hey, is Stand Your Ground even a law that we need on the books? I know people have been trying to get it repealed for quite some time. I believe this. If you know the history of Stand Your Ground, and it's just something I'm not going to get into today, it wasn't like any of the laws made for people of color, particularly black people. When that law came about, it was specific for a group of people, and it was white males. I can tell you that from the history of it. And so this wouldn't be any different. And what I say when I do interviews and I talk about this thing is that we have laws that, people keep saying, hey, the law, the law, the law. And the fact of the matter is that we can have all these laws and these letters and these words on black and white all day long. We still have to have human people to look at it and to decide how to apply it. And what we need to get past is that officers, law enforcement, judges, like anybody else, are people, are human people with human experiences. And by raising them to a moral standard or a superhuman superiority, that they somehow are not biased and can rid themselves of that, is obviously just wrong. And so we're going to have to figure out a way to be honest with ourselves about that, because it's permeates in everything in the United States, in every fabric of everything. So I think you all are going to have to really consider that and really push back on that. And that's pretty much all I have for that today. I want to thank you all. I would like for you all, I normally don't ask you to do this, but this is something that I think we should share, because I know that my case was out. I've done a few interviews, and it's always like 30 minutes, and then it's a soundbite of like 2 minutes, if that. But this kind of gives extensive information about Stand Your Ground from how I've been watching it for the last couple of years, and just let people know. Also, make sure you sign the petition. I'll find that from Mark Williams and put it in there. Check it out, read it. If it's something you believe in, sign it and share it. And that is all I have for today, y'all. Thank you for joining me again. And y'all stay healthy, stay safe, stay in the house, stay on with a mask on. Take care of yourself. Y'all take care. Peace out.